Next level surprise. My mom always wanted to be an astronaut, and one year my dad surprised us all with a trip to Disney World, except once we got there, he drove us to NASA instead, and he surprised my mom with front row seats to a rocket launch and lunch with a real astronaut, and she was bald from joy. Honestly, if I saw my mom that happy, I wouldn't care not going to Disney World. Plus, it's a rocket launch. A rocket going into space. That's so cool on its own, I'd probably be psyched for that too. Piggybacking top comment to say I never realized how close Orlando Cape Canaveral were to each other. It's only an hour due east. Yup. One year we went to Disney World, and part of our week there we went to Cocoa Beach to watch the Space Shuttle Endeavour launch from the shore. It was really cool, and I got hit in the head by a sea turtle while swimming. Realized my phone misentered space as spellus. Corrected. All of Florida is only about a 2 hours drive across. I'm in Tampa and I can see rocket launches on a clear day. I commuted 4 times a week for work. Lol. She says in a follow-up tweet that they went to Disneyland too in the NC. My girl doesn't even know we landed on the moon. She thinks Buzz Lightyear is an actual astronaut. To all those who worry that there was no Disney for the kids, don't worry. The Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex, which is where they'd be going, is a mere hour away from Walt Disney World. It's easy enough to just add a day to a trip to drive out there. It's highly likely that this was tagged on to an already present Disney trip. Apart from the switcheroo, that Space Center is a great place to take kids. Experience though. Yes. When I was a kid we had a field trip to Kennedy Space Center and got to sleep under the mounted rocket in the visitors center. I remember looking up at it and being in awe that it had been to outer space. I partially credit this field trip for my love of astronomy. Also, I went to the KSC on my 5th birthday and I barely remember it, except that I know we spent nearly a full day there. Loved it, kept asking to go back. Until they got down there and the launch was scrubbed for 2 more weeks, like what happened to me. Weary. I want to do something like this for my wife. This is so awesome. I can't even imagine that emotion seeing it in person. I always get chills and tear up watching it on NASA live stream. I wish I knew my husband's username so I could drop a subtle hint for our next trip, maybe email or text him a link to this post with just "Aw, isn't that sweet?" or something. Maybe not as subtle as you might like, but I bet he'd get the message. Lol. Smiling face with hearts. I now feel insecure about my gift-giving skills. That is simply adorable. Shows how much he loves her smiley face. That's super wholesome. She must have been combusted with joy, because her mind went out of this world. My toddler daughter's wish to make a wish. To be an astronaut. We went to Kennedy Space Center, witnessed a rocket launch, and had lunch with an astronaut. A lot people couldn't believe we intentionally didn't go to Disney. Personally, I'd take a rocket launch at NASA over Disney World. You can always do Disney World. Bummer for the kids, win for the mom. As a kid, I'd rather see a real live rocket launch and have lunch with an astronaut over Disney World. I dunno, I was only 7 to 9 and I loved it. They were on TV so I knew enough. Maybe for younger kids. NASA isn't as fun as Disney, but it's worth a visit if you have a spare afternoon in Florida. Went to Florida in December 1988. The first few days were spent around Cape Canaveral, Fort Lauderdale, Kissimmee. Went to Kennedy Space Center just days before the Atlantis launch and saw a bunch of the final prep work from a distance. It launched on December 2nd. Just a few days later, we spent a week at Disney, then traveled to see my great-uncle in Jacksonville. When we flew back to MI, it was in the 60s in Florida. It was in the single digits with about 2 feet of snow in Detroit. I'm willing to bet they did Disney the rest of the time they were in Florida. Win for both. If they went to the Kennedy Space Center it would be okay. It's pretty fun there as well. That's so wholesome.
Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.